Barbecue. The word derives from BBQ, which to the Taino people of the Caribbean islands meant sacred fire pit. We are definitely on sacred ground today, if we can get in. I'm here to learn a little bit about the science of barbecue, so I came to a man who knows a little bit about that, Aaron Franklin.
Well, that's debatable. How's it going?
So, what is barbecue?
I think barbecue is something that's cooked over a live fire. So that could encompass grilling, slow offset cooking, cooking in the ground, cooking whole hog over coals, any of those kinds of things I call barbecue, but really for me on a personal level, barbecuing is more of a German Czech, Central Texas style. That's like an offset cooking. I experiment all the time. At the end of the day, like, feel trumps any like black and white number or equation that you could possibly have. If something's not tender, it's just not tender. If something's dry, it's just too dry. But the science behind these things, how wood burns, how airflow works, if you start thinking about fluid dynamics inside of a cooker, start thinking about all these other things, then yeah, science has a pretty huge part of it. I think good barbecue is a balance between science and just natural gut instinct.
Cooking is really just thermodynamics and chemistry, just much tastier. Inside the smoker, air molecules are moving around really rapidly thanks to that hot fire. They're vibrating all crazy, and when they smack into the brisket, they transfer that energy to the meat, either contributing to chemical reactions or raising the temperature. Meat browns when it cooks, whether it's direct heat like a steak or a hamburger, or slow like barbecue. The heat breaks proteins down into amino acids, which then react with sugars to create this molecular deliciousness, which happens to be brown. Now, it's not caramelization, it's something called the Maillard reaction.
King of barbecue here in Texas is brisket. It started off with whole animals, and you would just sell what you could, and then whatever as a method of preservation, you would barbecue stuff on like Sundays.
For us to fully understand the science of barbecue, we need to know a little bit about the hunk of meat that we're cooking. Now, meat in general is muscle, which is primarily protein, fat, some vitamins and minerals, and a whole lot of water. Now, brisket comes from across the chest area of a cow, or right here. And since cattle don't have collarbones like us, this muscle has to support more than half their body weight. Now, that means it's got a lot of three things: hardworking muscle, fat, and connective tissue. It's basically the opposite of filet mignon. But if we apply the right kind of science, those three things can come together like Voltron to make something very tasty.
So at the end of the day, you want it to be tender, juicy, good bark with good fat render.
Now, some of you might not want to hear this, but making good barbecue is like making Jell-O. Now, ribs, brisket, pork shoulder, all of these cuts of meat have tons of connective tissue, like the molecular glue that supports all of those muscle fibers. Now, collagen, one of the proteins in connective tissue, can make up a quarter of all the protein in a mammal's body. Now, if you cook them fast, these proteins snap up tight like rubber bands, and they have the texture of them too. But if you cook them slow, then they melt. When collagen is heated slowly and held there for hours and hours, its long protein chains break down and water works its way in. And that collagen turns to gelatin, exactly the same stuff that's in this box. And that's what makes good barbecue so tender inside. It's meat Jell-O. Barbecue cuts also have a pretty good amount of fat. Animal fats are made of triglycerides, which have mostly saturated fatty acids. Now, these have much higher melting points than unsaturated fats like, say, vegetable or olive oil that you have in your kitchen, because those straight triglyceride tails are stable and they're packed nice and close. As we heat saturated fats up slowly, we can disrupt those hydrogen bonds and they turn to liquid, which is called rendering and is delicious. Together, melting collagen to gelatin and liquefying fat make meat oh so tender and delicious. You need no teeth to eat this beef.
What's fun about an oven? There's nothing fun about ovens. You know, did they have ovens back in the early days out of, coming up through Mexico? No, you dug a hole in the ground and you buried a head, on coals. You cooked on fire. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, is more on a traditional side of it. Like, I'm not going to use electricity, I'm not going to use gas, no assisted, like any heat source of any kind. I mean, we have light bulbs and I don't even like that so much. And it tastes good. And that gets into a whole nother thing too, with how you're using wood. Are you using green wood? Are you using dry wood? Or is it post oak, hickory, mesquite, pecan? Any of these different kinds of woods, they all taste different, they cook different.
Hardwoods that are used in barbecue smoke have lots of cellulose and lignin. Now, when burnt slowly, cellulose caramelizes into sugar molecules that can flavor the meat, and lignin is converted into all kinds of aromatic chemicals that flavor the meat and can even act as chemical preservatives. You just can't have brisket, or really any barbecue, without that beautiful smoke ring. Now, this is some cool chemistry, or hot chemistry. Meat starts out red because it's full of oxygen-carrying molecule called myoglobin. Now, iron-containing myoglobin starts out red, but as it heats up, the iron in its heme group oxidizes and it turns this brown color. So why is the ring still red? Well, barbecue smoke contains gases like carbon monoxide and nitric oxide, which is made by the burning wood, and that gas diffuses into the edges of the meat where it binds the myoglobin in place of oxygen. Now, those nitric oxide myoglobin compounds just so happen to be pink. So the edge stays nice and red while the interior gets brown like normal.
Kind of the art of working a fire is to control those things and get certain flavors out of a piece of wood. It's not just heat. It's not just the temperature on a gauge. It's how the smoke is coming out of a smokestack. It's how a piece of wood, if it flames up and then it dies out real quick, it's about a heat curve. How long is it going to last? Are you forcing a piece of wood to do something that it doesn't naturally want to do? You can't really make a piece of meat do what you want it to do. You can only guide it to do what you think you want it to do. So kind of go with that. It's all about trial and error. Don't give up. Keep working on it. And if you really wanted to, you could watch the BBQ with Franklin videos.
Out here we might have beer cans and aprons instead of test tubes and lab coats, but barbecue is science, y'all. It's chemistry, physics. The best part is you get to eat your experiments. Stay curious and hungry. I'm gonna go get some food. A very special thanks to Aaron Franklin and the whole crew here at Franklin Barbecue. If you're ever in Austin, Texas, line up early because this is the best barbecue in America. Seriously, you can look it up. The only rule of a fictional universe is that it is self-consistent. It doesn't have to agree with our science, or our logic, or our commonly accepted moral code that says killing people is a bad thing. There is only one God in that universe, and his name is Gurn.